to welcome you this morning. We're real excited about the program that we have today. You know, a little bit about St. John's. We are a community hospital. That's our role, that's our niche, and it's something that we take very serious and have a lot of pride in. And even though we are a community hospital, we've received a lot of state recognition and national recognition for the quality of care that we provide here at St. John's and for patient safety. So it's a real honor to have you here today and let you see St. John's and a little bit about who we are and what we are. As I said, we're a community hospital. We service the whole Northeast community. We service a community of about 400,000 people, but one of the largest communities that we serve is the Maplewood community. And with that, it's a real privilege to host this event along with the St. Paul Chamber and Health East, Citizen Health East. It's a group that is active in the political arena here for Health East. So it's a real honor to have our candidates here and to be able to help host this Maplewood Mayoral Forum. So with that, real quickly, I'm going to introduce Chris Johnson from the St. Paul Chamber, who has a few words of welcome also.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, I'm an old school teacher. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for coming out this morning. This is really going to be a fun morning here this morning. I want to first of all thank Scott and St. John's for hosting us, and let's give them a round of applause. They provided the refreshments and everything this morning. Thank you, Scott. I don't know if we should thank the moderator yet, but we're going to do that anyways. Let's give a round of applause for Ted Lilly for willing to do this morning. Thank you, Ted, as well. Today's program is a great opportunity for you to hear firsthand from all of the candidates that are running for mayor, and I want to thank each of them for being here this morning with us. First of all, we should thank the candidates for taking that step forward, to put themselves out there, to have a chance for you to hear what they stand for. And I think, candidates, we just thank you for running for office. Let's give you a round of applause as well before we get started this morning. This is going to be, as you see with the cameras here, taped here and replayed on television as well. So if you've missed part of today's forum, or if you're at home, this is an opportunity again for you to hear from the candidates that are running for mayor. I want to again thank St. John's for hosting us here this morning and encourage you to enjoy the conversation and ask questions as we get to the question and answer part. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And without further ado, let me introduce Ted Lilly from Lilly Suburban Newspapers, who's going to help moderate the forum this morning. So, Ted.
Thank you, Scott. And again, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out this morning. We do appreciate you coming here. Again, as was said, I am Ted Lilly. I'm the co-publisher of Lilly Suburban Newspapers, and I'm also a past chair of the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. This candidate forum is hosted by the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce and St. John's Hospital. We also want to thank the Maplewood, Oakdale, North St. Paul Rotary Club for joining us this morning. These organizations have come together to learn more about the candidates running for the mayor of Maplewood. Our combined interest in this race demonstrates a recognition of the important role that local government plays in the success of local business community. We hope that by hosting this candidate forum, we are able to raise awareness of the issues before residents cast their ballots in the September 15th primary for the election of the Maplewood mayor and also the city council. This forum is being taped by On Location, Channel 19, and will be shown on that station on Monday, September 14th at 7 p.m. and may be available at other times. Please check with the station for other showings. Before we go any further, I would again like to thank St. John's Hospital for hosting this event. St. John's Hospital was just named one of America's best hospitals by U.S. News and World Report. They were listed among the top 50 hospitals in the country, in part due to the patient safety record here, low mortality, and offering of 5 key technologies that are available at this location. We also want to thank the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest regional chamber of commerce in the state of Minnesota, with over 2,000 members across the East Metro area and in Maplewood. Many of our members live and work in the Maplewood community and have a strong interest in this election. we'd also like to take a moment to reflect on the terrible tragedy that took place last weekend in the neighboring community of North St. Paul. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and fellow officers and friends of Officer Rick Crittenden. Officer Crittenden died in the line of duty on September 7th, 2009. And we also send our thoughts and prayers to the Maplewood police officer, Julie Olson, who was involved in that tragedy. They both acted courageously and decisively in protecting our community, and please join me in a moment of recognition of what they did for us. Thank you. The primary election will be held, as I said, on Tuesday, September 15th. And I want to strongly encourage you to get to know more about our candidates, learn about them, and get out and vote. This is so important. Thank you. So our process this morning is that all 7 candidates who filed to run for mayor of Maplewood were invited to join us, and we are proud and happy that 6 of them have been able to get here this morning. Before I introduce the candidates and ask them to make their opening comments, let me explain the process that we will be using here today. Each candidate will have about 2 minutes for an opening statement. After the opening statements, we will begin our prepared questions, and each candidate will have the opportunity to lead on one question, and they will have 2 minutes to answer that question. All others will have the chance to respond to that question, and will have 1 minute for a response. After the questioning segment, we will have 2 minutes again for closing comments. And I would like to ask our candidates to please note Allison here in the center will be our timer, and she will hold up a sign that says 15 seconds that we have to go, and then she has a bell there to remind us when our time is over. I think she's timing me also. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our opening comments, and we will go in alphabetical order, starting here with Mr. Bob Cardinal.
Thanks, Ted. Thank you all for attending on this very difficult day and the funeral that is coming up. To lighten it up a little bit, I see a rose between thorns here. Mayor Longry, we are here to work with you in this discernment process to see how Maplewood can best improve our city, and I would hope that we'd all agree that what we want is what's best for Maplewood, for the citizens, and not individually or any selfish means. So what's best for Maplewood, it'd be my main objective here as we discuss the issues. A little background. Oh, by the way, I saw Mayor Longry's significant other, Kevin Berglund, handing out some campaign literature. If anyone needs my campaign literature, it's on this table up here. A little background. I grew up in Maplewood. I was born at St. John's, or no, at Bethesda Hospital down by the Capitol. And I grew up on Arcade Street, a little kid who ran into the future mayor of Maplewood on a pond just down the street. Little did I know that he would eventually be the mayor. And so I grew up in Maplewood. I went to Edgerton School. I went to Capitol View. I went to Kellogg High School. That was a combined school with Ramsey. It is now Roseville. 15 seconds. And so I've been a lifelong member of Maplewood, except for a year or two when my wife got me to move to St. Paul when we got married, and then when I was in the service for 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Cardinal. Mr. Marv Copen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see a nice crowd here. My name's Marv Copen. I'm a business person in Maplewood. I've been in business almost 30 years, Party Time Liquors. I'm a past president of the White Bear Avenue Business Association. I was one of the founders of the East Side Area Business Association, which we laid the groundwork for the Phelan Boulevard Initiative, which a lot of people don't understand. When you do these things, it's a long process. So the ones that started it usually aren't the ones that are recognized at the finish line. I'm an active member in the Lions Club, a Boy Scout leader. I was on the city council for 12 years. And the reason I'm running is that I want to bring some leadership to this community and move this community forward. I met with Jim Atkinson, the city manager, earlier this year, and he has a couple of priorities. And one is business retention, and the other one is business redevelopment to create a new tax base. And I think if we move forward, we can make some of these things happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Copen. Diana Longry.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having this event. One thing that I would like to say is that during my term in office, it's been very exciting to me and very rewarding to be able to give voice to the citizens at Maplewood so that they feel that they are listened to, that they feel that actually their voice matters in what we do at City Hall. And I believe that that's probably one of the biggest changes in the culture in our city. One thing, though, that I want to address specifically with you folks today is that the city of Maplewood must not neglect its small business community, and that when city administrators show indifference to the small business issues, that the elected officials must speak up and publicly articulate the small business message. And I encourage you to look at everybody's voting record up here who has a voting record, and you will see that I can articulate that small business message. I can, and I do. Now, I understand that there are many things that are very important to the business community. One, of course, is being able to have the proper type of signage so that you can communicate your message, so that that way you can get your customers and your clients in the door. Another important issue is whether or not the property taxes are beyond what you can afford on your bottom line. And of course, that's one thing that people will know watching the meetings, that I continually ask about. What is the impact of the property taxes, not just upon the home property owner, but upon the commercial business owner as well? We need to consider both parts of the equation. And also, of course, there's the issue of looking at business retention. This is something, of course, that I have asked to have in Maplewood for the last 4 years that I have been there. We have been working towards it, so this is nothing new. We've been working on this for the last 2 years, certainly, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Longry. Will Rosbeck.
Good morning. I present myself to you this morning as the clear choice for Mayor of Maplewood. Usually when I discuss why I'm qualified to be the mayor, I talk about the fact that next month I will have completed 20 years of continuous service to the city of Maplewood. But it's not just that I've been there for 20 years. I've been active in helping to shape the city. I was involved in the Planning Commission to help bring the initial environmental laws to the city that has made us the green city that we are today. I was involved in the layout of many of the streets and developments that we have throughout Maplewood, and have also been involved in things down to the details of how every house is situated on its lot. On the City Council, I have helped to form the various ordinances that help us get along with our neighbors and make it so that the city can run and function in a good and efficient manner. And so, as I go out and talk to people, most people that I talk to say that they love the city of Maplewood. They see it as an oasis next to the large metro St. Paul area. And so my contention would be that if indeed that's how you feel about the city, well then you are enjoying some of the things that I have helped to bring forward in the city over the last 20 years. In the way of just general experience of other things that I've done with my time for the city is that I have spent, of course, 14 years on our City Planning Commission. I've been president of the Ramsey County League of Local Governments. I'm a member of the Northeast Suburban Transit Commission, the Rush Line Corridor Task Force, and I'm a commissioner on the St. Paul Water Utilities, all of which are things which help to make Maplewood a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosbeck. Mr. Ken Smart.
Hello, everyone. I first of all want to thank you for being here. I want to thank St. John's for hosting this, and I actually want to thank St. John's for the quality of care that you're providing. We've lived in Maplewood since 1982, and I have 6 kids, and this is where our 6 kids were born, in this hospital. And youngest one is in the back now with Mom back there. And I have to say, from the first kid to our last one, which are spaced 20 years apart, there's been some upgrades in the maternity ward. So it's also been humbling as I've campaigned, humbling because of people willing to listen when I come to their doors and listen to what I have to say, but also humbling for me to hear, more importantly, what they have to say. And people want change. And quite frankly, that's why I'm running up here. It's also humbling, I'm reminded, when you've got your own 3-year-old daughter sitting over here and starts to applaud one of your opponents here. So I don't know what you said, Will, but you got her attention. So, and I know nobody needs my campaign literature, but if you actually want some, my son over here, which is Corey, one of my 6 kids, will be happy to find some to give to you. So if you really want some, you can get some there. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. I've lived here since 1982 when I started working for 3M, except for 3 years down in Austin, Texas. I do work in finance. I am a certified public accountant, certified internal auditor. And it tells you a little something about why I'm running, because quite frankly, I think we spend too much money in the city. I believe in limited government, and I think that there's a way for us to be a little bit smarter. I do think there are core city services that we need to support: police, fire, parks and rec, and roads. But I also think there's a way to do it smarter. And I also have to tell you that I do support limited government. I don't think we need more controls in our private life. So thank you. Thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. Mr. John Wyckoff.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Wyckoff. I was born in St. Paul. I went to Hazel Park Junior High School, and after that I went to Harding High School. I went to Lakewood Junior College and studied art, majored in art, and then after that I went to the University of Minnesota and studied architecture and learned how to lay out cities and design roads and buildings and bridges and things like that. So I feel like I have a lot of experience out there from schooling, my job. I've had many jobs throughout my lifetime. My first job I ever had was working at Max TV. I got the job, I went there to sign up, and he said, "I'm gonna hire you just because your printing is so nice." And so after that, I ended up doing all his records over again, rewriting everything, and then he started to teach me how to build and repair TV sets. So from my very first job to what I'm doing right now, I'm in the sign business, and I've been in the business now for about 30 years. And so I learned how to work with people. I learned how to listen to people. I learn what they want me to do. Every day I'm working with people, and I have to fulfill all their needs in their signs. So I really think that I have a lot of experience in working with people, listening to them, and doing what they want me to do. So I think I would make a good mayor of Maplewood as well. And in my closing, or in my comments here, that I think I could do a good job running Maplewood. I've been going door to door, talking to people and listening to what their needs are, what they've been telling me. The senior citizens are hurting out there. They want to see the taxes lowered, and businesses are telling me the same thing, that they're paying way too much in property taxes, and they're being turned out, and they're going to leave town if they don't have their taxes reduced.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff, and thank you all of your candidates for your opening comments. We now will move into the question part of the forum, and I want to remind you that each of you will have an opportunity to lead on a question, and as the lead, you will have 2 minutes to answer that question, and then the following candidates will have 1 minute for a response. So the first question will start again at this end of the table with Mr. Cardinal. Mr. Cardinal, please describe for us what the role of the mayor is as you see it, and how will you implement that vision?
That question was tailored for a former mayor, someone that served 6 years as mayor of Maplewood. And you haven't witnessed that in the last 4 years, and you won't witness that with some of the people that are running for mayor. When I was elected mayor, I asked George Rosbeck, and George was appointed mayor when Gary Bastian was appointed to be a judge. I asked George to, and this was like January or February of that year, I asked George to let me know when when he made a decision whether to run for mayor or not. And in June, woke up and got the morning paper, and it was announced that he was not going to run. He didn't call me, but I got the hint that he wasn't running, and there were 2 council members that were running for mayor, and they were in the middle of their term as council members. So there was no consequences for them if they ran and lost, and you're going to witness that again this year. Someone that is running in the middle of a term, no consequences. There was a lesson to be had there, and that happened again 4 years ago. Running the middle of your term, no consequences. I think that speaks to character. When I was mayor, there were 4 people that were on the council that were of the liberal DFL persuasion, known DFLers, and I was a conservative, the only conservative there, and I was mayor, and I had to battle all 4 of those. The public didn't know that, but I battled it for 4 years, for more than 4 years, for 6 years. And the biggest thing that you need is someone that is not partisan, and you have partisan people taking place right now. You cannot be a partisan mayor. You're nonpartisan, and that's what I was, and that's what I will continue to be.
Thank you, Mr. Cardinal. Marv Copen, describe the role of the mayor as you see it, and how would you implement that vision?
The role of the mayor is the leadership role. The mayor is just one vote, but they conduct the meetings. And I had the privilege of working under Gary Bashan when he was mayor, and learning how to run a good meeting, keep it focused, keep it moving, and being out of there at a reasonable time. The other role of the mayor is to build a team together, work together. And under a leadership role, it's your job to bring everybody together, to work together. Now, you're not always going to agree together, but everybody's going to have to be civilized and work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Copen. Diana Longry.
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, I think it's important that folks realize that Maplewood, of course, is a Plan B city. And so the answer to this question is dependent upon what is the role of a mayor, and also what is the role of the mayor in a Plan B city. Because with Maplewood being a Plan B city, that means that the city manager is the one who runs the day-to-day operations. He or she are the ones who coordinate the staff, all of their efforts and what they do at City Hall. So what does the mayor do? Well, the mayor, of course, is there to, as you've heard, to facilitate the meetings, to make sure that everything runs smoothly. But more importantly, behind the scenes, what does the mayor do? A mayor is there to help facilitate citizens' ability to get answers and for businesses to get answers, and to hook up those citizens and businesses with the right people at City Hall who actually are the ones in power to take care of the issues at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Longry. Will Rosbach.
I believe that the role of the mayor in Maplewood really has not been understood by the last couple of mayors that we have had. The mayor is a council member in Maplewood. They have only one vote, and they have no veto power. The mayor really can only lead by creating an atmosphere that allows the city council to do their job. The city council meetings are meant to be the business meetings of the citizens of Maplewood. There has to be consideration in the running of those meetings that they should be done in a set amount of time. And this is one of the things that the mayor has direct control over. It's not necessary to be meeting till midnight or till 2 in the morning. This doesn't mean that we should rush through the items and that we shouldn't hear from our citizens. But as the chair of the meeting, the mayor is the one who has the direct control over how that business is done.
Thank you, Mr. Rosbach. Mr. Smart.
Well, thank you. You know, I think the role of a mayor is much like the role of any elected person, and that should be service to our citizen taxpayers. And in service, that means listening to them, helping them, and quite frankly, help them have a more enjoyable life in the community in which they live. I also think that what people want out of the mayor is somebody who has a vision for the city, somebody who can express that vision with positive attitudes. And with that, I do think you have to be able to work with people. Collaboration, work together, get some joint agreements as to where we want to go as a city, and then you work with the city staff and the great people we've got working in the city with operational excellence to actually implement what we want to achieve as citizens of our city. Thank you.
Mr. Wyckoff?
Well, you know, I like going to these city council meetings and watching and listening to the people that are running our city. Mayor Diana Longery has done a great job, actually. She's actually said no to every single tax increase, and I watch all the mayors throughout the time I've been in Maplewood since 1990, and they all have their different characteristics on how they run a city. I believe that they all have a different way to do it. Some will take longer, some want to know more data, more details, and that would be my story too. I'd want to listen to what the citizens have to say. I would want to understand the problems. There's so many little intricate problems and things that are going on in the city that the average general public doesn't know about. And so I think it's very, very clear that we have to understand all the problems before we make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next question, I would like to remind the audience to please turn off any cell phones that you may have with you. Thank you. All right, the next question, we will have the lead of Marv Copen. Mr. Copen, the city of Maplewood, along with many communities in the East Metro and across the country, are facing a number of increased foreclosures. What problems does that create for the city, and how can we address those issues?
First of all, when you have, I talked to Craig Waldron, the city manager of Oakdale, and how they've been handling theirs. And they first of all, they want to find out who when there's foreclosed on, who owns the paper, so they can contact that person. If there's some broken windows, they want to, instead of putting plywood up, they use plexiglass so it doesn't create blight in the community. And the idea is to work with that person and keep the lawns mowed, so, so it doesn't look obvious. Because the last thing you want is a house next door to you that's obviously foreclosed and run down. That's the most important thing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Copen. Diana Longery.
Thank you for this question. We've actually talked a little bit about this at city council meetings. Now, some of my ideas on this is that, of course, one of the proposals that's on the table is to put in place an ordinance to register vacant houses. Well, I think that goes a little too far, because I think there's other things that the city of Maplewood can do. One, of course, is that the foreclosure process is indeed a public process, and the notice is always placed in the legal notice section of the newspaper. And it would be very easy, and I have proposed this to the council already and to city staff at a council meeting, that those notices, then of course that data from those legal notices can be placed into a database that the city already maintains, can be logged into our GIS software, and then our police officers who have that software and the computers in the police cars, that when they do their neighborhood patrols, can actually know that those are houses that they should take a look at. Plus, we need to have more awareness on the homestead.
Thank you. Mr. Rosbeck.
So just as a historical moment of note, I agree with Diana on several things having to do with this issue. We had our staff bring forward a draft ordinance which was overly aggressive and would have required that the vacant homes in our city be kept up better than the homes that are actually occupied. And so that's something that we need to work on still. The question was, what are some of the problems that are caused in the community by vacant homes? And so certainly diminished property values in the neighborhood, particularly if there gets to be several houses that are vacant. We also have vagrants who break into the houses and are squatters essentially on the property. We've had homes that are stripped of the copper and plumbing that are in the homes. Homes where boiler heating systems, because they're shut off, have frozen and caused great damage to those homes. And so certainly it's an issue, but it's also an issue that is diminishing as we go forward.
Mr. Smart?
I think the previous responses have given a pretty good response to the first half of the question, what are some of the problems that foreclosed homes cause for the city? I'm going to focus a little bit more on what we can do about it. I really believe that we need to work with the local businesses in Maplewood, number one, to make sure that we've got the right mortgage and housing products available for people to purchase homes, especially the foreclosed homes, who are able to do so, who have the credit worthiness to do so. But you also have to attract the buyers. And we're in competition with all the other cities out there that have foreclosed homes. We need to articulate Maplewood as the desirable place to live. And Maplewood is such a great city. We are so close to so many things. We have access to 494, 61, 36, 94, 694. There is no more convenient place to live in the Twin Cities than right here in Maplewood. We need to attract the good citizens here. Thank you.
Mr. Wyckoff?
Well, I think one of the first problems is right at the very beginning, where people shouldn't be losing their homes. I believe their property taxes are way too high. I believe when we have to continually put in brand-new curb and gutters and resurface roads and put in walking paths, and the city continues to raise taxes on the citizens, are why people are losing their homes. And with jobs leaving the city and businesses going out of our state and leaving, it just tells us that the city is not being run properly. I believe that the housing market is a huge, huge problem today in Maplewood, and that property taxes and expenses, especially for the elderly, they have fixed incomes. They cannot go out and find another job. They're stuck with their income. So I believe what has to be done is taxes have to be reduced, and the city has to reduce the jobs in the city. Thank you.
Mr. Cardinal?
That's a good question. I would ask the current council, the two members that are on the current council now, and I saw John Nephew here. John is on the council. I would ask those three to implement something. They have September, October, November, December to try and accomplish something. And I'll give them a little hint. When I'm out door knocking and campaigning, invariably I see an eyesore in every 50 to 100 house neighborhood. They're closed up, there's no one there, the cars have expired tabs on them, and the neighbors really can't do anything. I would ask the neighbors, after becoming mayor in January, I would ask the neighbors to report those homes in their neighborhood so that the city could address them. And so I give a challenge to the current council to accomplish something prior to January.
Thank you. Ms. Longery, you will lead on this next question, and it is, what do you think the city of Maplewood can do to attract and retain businesses in this tough environment?
Well, now that's the million-dollar question. And of course, if we had an easy solution and the silver bullet, it probably would have been done already. But I think it has many facets to it. One is, I think that we need to, and I have talked about this to the council at council meetings at least on 3 different occasions, that we need to do an inventory of our current business people in businesses in Maplewood, and do an inventory so that we understand, first of all, what kinds of businesses do we have in Maplewood. Then we need to link that with the demographics that we have in Maplewood, and then we need to project out and look at what are the trends for, 1, our demographics, and 2, the trends for the business and for what kinds of technology or other kinds of industry or cottage industries are being developed or created in the next 10 to 20 years. What's being projected? Then once we have that data, then we can make a plan. But if you don't have good, solid foundational data from which to work from, it's very difficult to say we're going to put together a plan. So you need to know the makeup of your business community, you need to know your demographics, you need to know your trends. Once you have that, then you need to have a pro-business philosophy. One is that you need to have a sign code ordinance that is something that the business community can work with and is not overly restrictive. People know that I have been an advocate for having signage for businesses. It's an important thing for our community. The other thing is looking at the property taxes, because commercial property owners cannot be the only ones who are shouldering the burden, and we hear so often at the council meetings that, well, the property taxes are going down.
Mr. Rosbeck?
The city has already taken an initiative to help with some of the things that the mayor is talking about. We recently formed a economic development authority, and one of the things that is going to do is to go out and actually conduct that survey in face-to-face meetings with the businesses in Maplewood. Mr. Smart had pointed out in his comments that Maplewood is a great place. It's not just a great place to live because of all those streets that are around here. It's a great place to do business. And so we already have a setting that is a natural environment for businesses to flourish in. Maplewood, of course, is mostly a developed community, and so we need to be looking at redevelopment opportunities. And I have a clear record of supporting those type of opportunities in our cities, and that will be a benefit both to the citizens and to the businesses that are here now or could come in the future.
Mr. Smart?
Thank you. This is one of those questions that you could have a half-hour discourse on rather than 1 minute. But I'll try to just summarize some of my thoughts here. One is to attract and retain businesses, you have to start with the intent to be a friend of business. If you start with that intent, that will start to drive policy that will attract and retain businesses. When our new city manager was appointed last spring, I sat down with City Manager Antonin in April, and one of the things we talked about was forming an economic development authority, which we have now done in Maplewood. That is a key step if you want to attract businesses into your city. Certainly you have to market the city, the benefits that we have, the infrastructure that we have. To retain businesses, though, that's a totally different story. You need to have lower property taxes, you need to have lower business fees, and you need to have less regulation. All you need to do is take a look at North St. Paul Tap and Grill that went out of business because of too high of taxes and too many fees and regulations. That is a fact.
Mr. Wyckoff?
Well, once again, I believe it's this is a very, very expensive city to keep it going this way. There's way too many employees. From what I understand, there's 167 full-time employees of the city of Maplewood. That then is putting such a huge burden on the businesses here in Maplewood that they can no longer pay these high property taxes. When I've gone door to door talking to these businesses, they're telling me that their property taxes started out at $6,700, and then after 6-7 years later, now their property taxes are around $26,000 a year. And so this is telling me that the city is putting a way too great a burden on these businesses, and they're going to have to leave town because they're not in the business to lose money, they're in the business to make money. And so the whole entire picture and the total, what we're seeing here is that we have to reduce property taxes on the businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Cardinal?
Just for the record, I have met Mr. Anton also, and I think I could work with that guy. We find that the businesses here want to stay here and they want to expand. That's how you increase business. You expand with the existing businesses. So I encourage that. St. John Hospital had plans for expansion. I think they put it on hold for a little bit. I'm a business guy. I sell businesses. I work with business owners. Business is very difficult right now. If you're looking to relocate out of St. Paul, you could look at Maplewood, but there's very little space. So I would encourage business, and this is something that's been talked about forever. I remember Marv's always talked about this business retention expansion. So I think a business person talking to business would be a good thing for Maplewood.
Thank you. Mr. Copeland?
When I first took office of the city council in 1994, I say we, as a council, initiated a business retention program. Our first stop was Schroeder Dairy. And their first remark was, that's the first time in 100 years anybody from the city of Maplewood's ever talked to us. Well, anyway, we created the dialogue, and they said, well, if we would stay here and expand, would you give us any TIF money? He said, we've never done it before, but we've certainly considered it. Well, we worked out an arrangement to give them some TIF money so they could expand. They've expanded several times since. But had we not made that call, they were being wooed by Wisconsin to move over there and were promised a bag of goodies. So that's why business retention is so important. We initiated the program back in the 90s, but now the program no longer exists. We need to reinitiate that program. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosbeck, you will lead on this question. Are you in favor of the city purchasing land in the Fish Creek Greenway for conservation? And if so, how would that be funded?
I am in favor of additional land to be purchased in the Fish Creek area. I'm not in favor of the city funds being used to make those purchases, and I'm not in favor of the thought of buying the entire land parcels that surround there. We're fortunate in that Ramsey County currently owns the majority of the land that surrounds Fish Creek, and so there are a couple of missing links in that chain that would prevent us at the moment from having a complete greenway corridor in that area. I certainly have had a clear voting record of environmental activism in the city, and I want to ensure that we create a large enough barrier around Fish Creek that will make sure that we have control of the flow of the water into that area. And of course, the Ramsey County Metro Watershed has already done numerous projects on that creek in order to help prevent further erosion and that type of thing. Maplewood is not in a position financially to be able to go down and come up with the millions of dollars that it would cost to purchase all of the land in that area. And if you combine all of the parks and open spaces, both from Ramsey County and Maplewood, in the city as a whole, we're close to 25% of our city being parks and open space. And we do need to have a continued ability to have some growth in our tax base. I also really do not favor our current policy down in that area of having 2-acre minimum lots. All that does is use up the land in a very inefficient manner and forces sprawl to move outside of the Met Council's control area. And so we need to have some development, but certainly we need to do some work to protect the creek itself.
Mr. Smart.
I do not support the city purchase of additional land down in the Fish Creek area. Will's already talked about the fact we simply cannot afford it as a city, so it would be foolish for any of us to sit up here and say that we support something that we know we cannot afford. Second of all, I do support development, and I do believe that people who choose to live in that part of the city choose to live there for a reason, and part of that is the natural beauty. They will take care of the land. It is arrogant to think that elected people and city staff are going to take care of land better than private property owners. They will take care of it. I do believe that we should maintain the zoning and the character of that area. So I certainly do not support a change in zoning that would allow higher density housing down there. Thank you.
Mr. Wyckoff.
Well, I agree with Ken Smart about this. I believe that we should have less government owning property, owning land, and that 2.5-acre parcels for putting houses on, it really is the way to go. I don't believe in putting high-density housing and more housing on land and houses closer together. It's like asking people to live in chicken coops. And we can see what happened in North St. Paul when people are all smashed together in apartments, and we can see that it's trouble. It brings trouble to the city by having people live so close together. They have no room, they have no place to go out and send their kids to play, and things are just difficult when people are living that close together. I believe that government should not control and buy up more property. I'm completely against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardinal.
I'd also like to comment on that, but first I'd like to recognize Delray Rocky and Dave Hafner. Both are running for council, and they are running mates, I think, with Mr. Smart. So thank you for being here, and I think I could work with both you if you end up on the council. I was campaigning down there, and if you get a high view in one of the streets at the tail end of Maplewood, and you go in the backyard and you look at the vast acreage out there, it's never been developed, and it'd probably be very difficult to develop. So I wouldn't encourage the city to go ahead and purchase the property. I don't know what purpose it would be other than to continue as open space or parkland. So I would not encourage the city to do that. But I think prior to doing anything, you need to talk to the citizens and the residents down there. One thing I'd like to mention, the Savannah project, there was, you needed 4 votes to buy property in Maplewood, and that was the thing that changed the election 4 years ago, the Savannah project.
Thank you. Mr. Copen.
The purpose of that is to create a corridor where the animal life can travel from the wetlands to the open space and so forth. Earlier this year, I went down to the Capitol to lobby Leon Lilly, because he sits on the environmental committee, to appropriate money for this. The city itself, we couldn't never afford to buy this without state help. But it was kind of comical when I was talking to Leon. I said, Leon, how you like serving in this committee where you get to do all the money? Leon says, I feel like I'm surrounded by vultures. But that's how, if we're going to make this happen, we have to do it by working with our state legislators. And that's why it's important to have a good rapport with them. Thank you.
Ms. Longley.
In my mind, the preservation of greenway corridors, first of all, doesn't have anything to do with who owns the land. It's how the land is preserved. Because there are many ways that you can preserve greenway corridors, and it doesn't have to be through city ownership. It could be through private citizens who have put their own land into conservation easements. It can be through regional ownership. It can be through other ways that have been discussed at the council. And so when we're talking about this question, there's actually several different aspects to it, because first of all, there's the property that is commonly called the Copar property, which is currently in receivership. And that, of course, is one thing. And then there's the private ownership. And I think that there are many things that can be done with preserving this regional jewel of the Fish Creek Greenway that's in the Mississippi critical area. Maplewood's only Mississippi critical area that we have. And housing is not appropriate at the Fish Creek.
All right, thank you. Mr. Smart, you will lead on this question. Tax increment financing is a tool that is sometimes used for economic development in many communities. Do you support the use of TIF in Maplewood, and under what circumstances?
Well, thank you. First of all, I moved the microphone closer because I get some indication that people may not have been hearing me in the back. And usually I've got a pretty loud voice, and that's not a problem. Right, Cor? Yeah, Corey usually has no trouble hearing me at home. And Bob brought up the fact that I have running mates. They're not really running mates, but Delray here and Dave Hafner in the back, I just want to recognize them. That we are trying to run as a team, and I have to tell you, even if you're not going to vote for me, you got to vote for these two guys. There are not any better citizen taxpayers in this city to represent you than Dave and Delray. So please get out there and vote for them. Tax increment financing. I believe there is a place for tax increment financing, but I believe it is a very, very small place. Too much of what is done with TIFs is nothing more than a giveaway to developers, and that is not a proper use of tax increment financing. If you really are going to use tax increment financing, it has to be done for the benefit of the citizens and the community in which you live, not for some developer who's just looking to pocket an additional $250,000, $1 million, $2 million in their pocket. I do believe that if there is a case that you've got a good business citizen who wants to expand and needs some financing help, that could be a possible use. But I have to tell you, I am really pretty much opposed to TIF.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wyckoff, TIF financing.
Well, I believe that when people ask for TIF financing, it just puts a burden on the other businesses in the area. And once again, the businesses cannot handle paying somebody else's property taxes. Somebody has to pay that property tax. And so it just puts everybody more of a burden, and it gives the people that already have money a big tax break. And so if they're able to come in and put up these big building projects, and then they're given a tax break on top of that, well, why not do it? They'll do it. But I'm against them putting a burden on the other businesses in town and residents of Maplewood. It seems very unfair to me. Thank you.
Mr. Cardinal?
Back in the middle 80s, St. John's looked at this out here, and I had a brother that was born at St. John's down on 7th Street, and of course he wasn't born in the 80s, but St. John Hospital, I don't think they ever got a nickel of tax increment financing. What an example is. I don't know if that played into their being one of the top 50 or 100 hospitals in the country, but they never got a nickel of financing. And what a success. You couldn't have a better success. And what a jewel for Maplewood. So I'm not inclined to go with tax increment financing to help people along. So just use that information. Appreciate it.
Mr. Copeland?
The purpose of TIF is to use it to create more tax base and more jobs. And my earlier example was Schroeder Dairy, where we met with them and worked out arrangements where they could expand, create more tax base, create more jobs. That's the purpose of TIF. Thank you.
Diana Longley.
Thank you very much. First of all, I do agree that there is a place for tax increment financing, but the elected officials have to be very frugal in how they dish it out. Because, of course, there are statutory requirements with the but-for test with regard to the tax increment financing. And there are different ways different kinds of projects that can use tax increment financing, whether or not if there are certain housing categories, or whether or not if it's for economic development or brownfield reclamation. And it's important for a community to understand, one, what is the amount of tax increment financing districts you have, and what's your portfolio, because different types of districts require different amount of resources from the city. So if you have a lot of housing districts, that requires extra public services, perhaps like police and fire. I also think that it's important to look at the analysis before you give out TIF as to the analysis of the portfolio, that the pro forma rather, that's given, and whether or not the people who are looking at the numbers have actually done the analysis, because all you need to do is switch a few numbers and it will change out the outcome of the but-for test.
Will Rosbeck.
I find it interesting, the answers and how they differ between those who are actually have served the city of Maplewood in a elected capacity and those who haven't. There's a clear evidence that there's a misunderstanding of what TIF is for the people who have not had the opportunity to actually use it and understand it. TIF is just another tool that allows the city to work with businesses and developers to improve the city. It certainly does not create a situation where other businesses have to absorb the taxes that are created, and there are taxes that are still paid on that land, but those taxes are redirected to specifically enhance that development as it takes place. Development in general is the favorite kicking boy of a lot of people in the city. But there is no other process in the city that brings more opportunity or money to the city than development does. It certainly does not indicate that I want to develop every square inch of the city, but a city that is not developing is in recession.
Thank you. John Wyckoff, you will take the lead on this question. What is your view of the appropriate role of debt in the finances of the city of Maplewood?
Well, I'm beginning to wonder when we are going to start paying off this, I believe it's $75 million debt to the city. And so are we paying on it right now? I don't believe we are. I believe that this debt Perhaps the debt is being paid on interest somehow. I'm not sure the exact numbers and the math on this, but I believe the city should not be in debt. We should have money in reserve. We should not be in debt. And it just puts a larger burden on our city and the taxpayers again and the businesses on having a debt load of $75 million here in the city of Maplewood. I've looked at other cities around and they don't have as big a debt as we do. But we seem for some reason to have a large debt, and this puts on a huge burden again on the taxpayers and the citizens of Maplewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cardinal.
Well, I'd give a clue to the current council members to get some expertise in addressing that. I think when I was mayor, it was at least $35 million, and it was always a concern to me. I know Marv, same thing. There's a real concern there. But it was handled in an appropriate way. The city finance director took steps to address it and finance it. So I would call in some experts. I would also get Dan Faust, who was there for 25 years and always had a sterling record, top best in the whole country for financing in a city of our size. I would get him working on a project, and it's unfortunate that he had to leave early. So that's what I would do immediately in January.
Mr. Copeland.
What they're referring to is the bonding debt, and a lot of that bonding debt is for new streets. And under that bonding debt, we have assessments that will go out for approximately 15 years, so there's a cash flow that will pay off those bonds. What Bob was talking about is back when we were working together, we were trying to be cautious not to. We had it about $35 million back then, but you don't want to let that bonding debt get too out of control. But that's like trying to compare your house payment to what your credit card balance is. They're not the same. Thank you.
Diana Longry.
Debt is always an interesting question when you're dealing with city finances because it is about the long-term bonding debt. However, I do want to correct the record here is that you've heard the previous two answers talking about a debt of $35 million that the city had for long-term debt. When I took office in January of 2006, the long-term debt that I took on as mayor that the city had at that time was 58 to 60 million. So maybe 35 million was what it was somewhere in between their terms, but certainly at the time when I took office, I know what it was. And currently it's somewhere around 78 million. I think that people who watch the council meetings know that whenever we do our bonding, that I ask what is the amount of the payback each year that we will have to add on to our budget so we can figure that in long term. Because every time you do take on debt, you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it and figure that into your future budgets.
Will Rosbeck.
Maplewood does not have too much debt. It's a fallacy. If you were to use as an example, and I know it's not accurate, the type of comparison that you'd have between you and wanting to buy a home. You can use about 30% of your income to buy a home. The average income of a person in the United States is $60,000. That means they can buy a home that would be valued at $280,000. In the city of Maplewood, our income is $40 million a year. That means that we have available $12 million a year to pay for debt in this example. We pay $3.4 million a year in debt. It also means that we could have a total debt, our house, so to speak, would cost $18 billion. And so we have $75 million worth of debt. And we have used our debt wisely. We have invested in a lot of road projects, which have created more debt for the city. But in the long term, we are paying less for those projects than if we waited to do it later.
Ken Smart.
You know, I'm, as I sit up here listening to the responses, reminded that just because you can do something probably doesn't mean that you should be doing something. I think that's how it is with our city debt. Just because we can take on more debt doesn't mean that we should be taking on more debt, and we need to keep that in mind. There is a place for debt, no doubt about it, and they should be for capital improvement projects such as roads, because you are going to fund the infrastructure. Definitely you should not have debt for operational needs, but you also have to have a vision here. When you take on this debt, what is going to be the ongoing operational costs that you're going to have to fund, and how are you going to fund that as well? So it's not just taking on the debt, it's the ongoing cost and the debt service. That's what's led to the property tax burdens that we face in the city here that people are unhappy about, whether it's citizen taxpayers or businesses. So we have to be smarter about that, and quite frankly, you got to have more intelligence when you run financial numbers on the projects of what's going to be the rate of return, what's the net present value. You can't just fund things just because you can. You got to ask yourself, is it what you should? Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will change the format a little bit now so that we have time to get through the whole panel prior to the closing remarks. What we would like to ask is that each person have 1 minute to answer the questions. We will not have one person with 2 minutes because we can't get all the way back and forth up the panel. So we'll start again with Mr. Cardinal with this question. What steps would you take to improve the civility and the efficiency of the City Council meetings?
Well, this election is going to make that possible. We're going to have a change. In January, we're going to have a new council. And I would hope that those 5 people can work together as a team. We've seen it in the past, and we have these last 4 years, we've seen a real problem. I think everybody would recognize that, and I think that's a lack of leadership. And it isn't just a lack of leadership from the mayor's seat, it's a lack of leadership from any council member. Someone asked me what's the problem? I don't see anything good at that council. I don't see anything good. So if we have a change, hopefully 3 new members, we're going to be able to work as a team and have a vision of working together and not an embarrassment. What an embarrassment. Business owners say it's an embarrassment. They don't want to admit that they're living in Maplewood. That's an embarrassment. We'll change that quickly in January.
Marv Copen.
Well, back when I was on the council, every year we used to have team building meetings. So we'd all get together and we'd learn to work together. And it was very effective. And I think if you go back and look at some of the council meetings from back when I was in the council, how well they went, you understand why these team building meetings are so important. Every year we do this so everybody would get on the same page and work together. We have to get back to doing that. Thank you.
Diana Longry.
Well, it's always interesting when you're at the council meetings, because when you're watching the meetings, you will indeed, if you watch those council meetings, you do indeed know who is civil and who is not. And of course, as the mayor, I do have the power of the gavel. However, you know what? I am also under the constraints that when one council member starts bickering with the other and starts saying other things out of turn, if I gavel them out, you know what happens? The next thing that they say is, oh, you don't let us speak. And then what happens is that when we're supposed to be having our time for questions only, you will get a long diatribe of discussion points rather than staying on point. So one thing I guess that I certainly would maybe change is maybe I'd use the gavel more often and just have to just tell them that they would have to be quiet. One thing about the team building, of course, I think it's important to have team building, and we did attempt to do that with our council social suppers that we had, but when half the council doesn't attend, it's hard to have team building.
Will Rosbeck.
For the last 4 years, we have not, as a single time, gotten together to set any goals for the city. This is the primary role of the Council of Maplewood. And so I would ask the council to get together to set goals, and I would work with them to try to establish those goals in particular in the beginning that can be agreed upon by all members of the council. Those goals would then be prioritized because we cannot do everything at once. We don't have the finances or the staff to allow us to do everything at one time. We would then have put ourselves in a position where, for a new council together, that we would all have agreed that these are things that we want to work on and make better in the city of Maplewood, and those are the things that we would concentrate on. You can't, as Mr. Cardinal indicated, just say we're going to get along better. You have to have a plan of how you actually will allow the council to work together.
Ken Smart.
One of the things I really believe in is the dynamics of teamwork. That's part of the reason why Dale, Dave, and I are running as a team, because as a team, you can accomplish things as a team. The entire city council should be a team working for the betterment of service to the citizens of our community. And if you start with that intent, then I think you do find those areas where you can agree on things. Not everybody agrees with everybody on 100% of the things. My wife and I don't agree on 100% of the things. I certainly wouldn't expect to agree with everybody on the council. I do agree, though, with Will, for instance, on development. You need to develop the city. So I'm sure we'd find common ground there. John Nephew and I don't agree on everything. I like talking with John and working with John. I think you form personal relationships to get along with people. And I do think that it comes with the setting of common goals and working for the common good of our citizen taxpayers. Thank you.
John Wyckoff.
Well, one thing that I see as a person that goes up at visitor presentation when I want to make comments to the city council, they sometimes laugh and snicker and look the other way. Some people turn their chairs sideways. I've seen city council members get up and leave the room. I don't believe that the city council is doing their job. They should sit there and listen to the citizens. Whatever they have to say, they should sit there and listen to them. That's their job, and they're not doing it. And I believe what's going on in the city of Maplewood right now, that's why there's 18 of us running for 3 jobs. We do not like what's going on in the city of Maplewood. And there's plenty of good candidates running, and we all believe that something has to be done. And I do believe that Daniel Longry has done a great job as far as organizing and running the meetings. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for answering all of the questions. We'll now move into the closing statements, and we each will have 2 minutes for the closing statements, and we will go in reverse order and start with Mr. Wyckoff first. Your closing statement.
Well, this is going to seem like a strange thing, but due to my reoccurrence of injuries from a sprint car racing accident, going door to door and talking to people, I have had severe injuries in about 1998 at the Princeton Speedway, and my doctor has informed me that he thinks what I'm trying to do going door to door is really re-injuring my parts of my body incredibly bad. So I'm going to take my doctor's advice. I have learned a lot today about all the mayoral candidates that have been given their comments today. And in my estimation, I believe that Ken Smart is by far the best candidate for mayor. Therefore, I would humbly request that my supporters cast their votes for Ken Smart and his team of Delray Rocky and Dave Hafner. My name will still be on the ballot, so do not vote for me. Vote this coming Tuesday for the team of Smart, Rocky, and Hafner. Vote again on November 3rd for the final voting date, and then please, I want to ask all my people that have my signs out there to keep them up until they can be replaced with the Vote Smart signs. This does not end my dream for secession. If the city returns to the past of the ideas of the past, the secession will rebound and become even stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wyckoff. Mr. Smart.
Well, that threw me off balance here a little bit, so I guess first I should say thank you, John, for the support. I welcome it, and but unexpected, but thank you. I appreciate that. You know, tell people I'm not a politician. I've never run for anything in my life. If you take a look at the way our campaign is done with the volunteers we have, our literature, our website, pretty amateurish if you look at it. But that's because We are just the average Maplewood citizen taxpayer that's lived in the city for a long time, between the three of us, almost 50 years. And we just feel that there's time for a change, and that time is now. And I'm very humbled, again, by the opportunity to go and talk with my neighbors. And I really don't view this as running for office, quite frankly. I view this as a great opportunity to learn more about our city and to learn and get to know more of my neighbors. I've met so many wonderful people. I love it. This is such a good city. But I have to tell you, we could be a great city. And honestly, that's why I'm running. I would like to be able to serve people and make this the great city that we have the potential to be. So please vote for Del Rey, Dave Hafner, myself, and we'll bring in a new spirit of optimism and the future into the city of Maplewood. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Rossbach.
To start out, I'd like to say that of the either prior or current elected officials that are running for mayor, if you do look at our records, I clearly have the most conservative fiscal approach to the city. My votes over the last 3 years in particular have been to raise the levy of the city only 2.1%. And if you look back at the voting records of Mr. Cardinal, Mr. Copen, and our current mayor, they well exceed that. That being said, there's been a lot of comments made here today about how high the taxes are in Maplewood. And quite frankly, that's not true. I have before me the League of Minnesota Cities tax comparison rate, which takes all of the cities, 29 of them in the metro area that are of similar size to Maplewood, and rates them on a median value home. Maplewood is right exactly in the middle of that chart. We are average. And so that means that you can't pull up your stakes here and move somewhere else and think that you're going to pay a lot less taxes. Also, there's been a misunderstanding here having to do with Maplewood's ability to actually control taxes. We set a levy, which is how much money the city needs to operate. The state is the one who controls the taxes that are paid by businesses or by residents. And so that is not something that we could change and control differently. We don't have the ability to say, you know, we want to help our businesses, and so we're going to charge them less taxes. That's not the role of Maplewood government. And so I think there's been some clear statements made today that show that if you're going to bring in someone who's inexperienced, who's just enthusiastic but has no experience, that they're going to spend a lot of time just trying to figure out what it is that they really can and can't do. Thank you.
Thank you. Diana Longree.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here today. And it's certainly always exciting for me to be in a forum such as this to be able to hear everyone's comments. I do want to reiterate that I do feel that it's important that you have elected officials in Maplewood who can speak up and publicly articulate the small business and business message in our community. And I think that if you look at the records of certainly the people who have served office, you will be able to tell who that is. And I certainly feel that I have a strong, tough pro-business record that you can look to. Because you see, I do walk in your shoes. I am an attorney right here in Maplewood. I have my own solo practice in the Gladstone area. And you know what? I've got to make the bottom line just like every other business owner here in Maplewood. I think it's also important to recognize is that many of the things that that's been talked about up here, certainly by my esteemed opponents who have a voting record, is that they talk about all the things they'd like to do. Well, they've all had that opportunity in the past to do those things. Even if they've been on the council for 12 years, they had the opportunity of doing those things. And I will say that I actively oppose the city's new business registration fee. And if you take a look at the voting records up here between the people who have had that opportunity to either talk about that fee or to enact that fee or set the groundwork for that fee, I'm the one who voted no, because that is one of those extra fees that adds to the bottom line of businesses in our community, and I voted no. And it's there, and you can read that. Also, I think it's important that on our on our 7-member Business Advisory Commission, that we had small business owners on there. And when we were having this discussion at the council, I was very happy to hear that the council agreed with my suggestion that we add and make sure that we have 3 small business owners on that Business Advisory Commission to the council. Thank you very much, and vote for Diana Longry.
Thank you. Marv Copen.
Well, thank you for being here today. What I'm talking about today is about leadership, how we can move the city forward, how we can work with the surrounding communities. I've had a lot of experience in doing so. I've always kept in contact with Craig Waldron, the city manager of Oakdale, because in the past we did joint powers with Oakdale and the school district to build an ice arena. In the past, when I was on the city council, we went together with Oakdale to purchase some equipment we could share to cut costs, because we did both, to share equipment. This is how you move forward. You work with the surrounding communities. You do joint powers. You do things together. You share information, and you work together. And that's what we're talking about we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Cardinal.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you, Scott, for putting this on, and Kay Becker. This is a real plus. Without this, the public wouldn't know about the candidates, the council members that are running for office. I would encourage people to call me if they have any questions that haven't been answered or I was unclear. On my flyer, I've got my cell phone, 651-398-1457, and express questions or concerns that you might have. History begs the question, how did you get that way? And I would revert back to when I was on the Planning Commission. This was the middle 80s. I was on for a couple years, and then George Rosbeck came on for a couple years, and then he ran for council. And then I served 7+ years, and then Will Rosbeck came on, and Will and I overlapped a couple months. And then after that, I know Marv served. He served 12 years on the council. And then during that time, I served 6 years as mayor, and I was first elected in November of 1999, 10 years ago, and served 6 years. And then Diana has served last 4 years. Criticism is something that you really have to look at, constructive criticism, and I can't criticize President Obama. I would wish him well to do the best he can, but what it really comes down to is bringing people together. And that's my vision for the city of Maplewood, to bring people together. We're going to have a change here, 3 new council members, and I want people to work together, bring them together, change that mood, forget about the bad stuff of Maplewood, and have a new day in January. So I'd encourage people to get out and vote. We had less than 8% vote in the primary 4 years ago when Diane and Will topped me, and I finished 3rd, and there was a difference of 50 votes. So if we could increase that turnout from 8% to maybe 10%, that'd be good. Please vote for Bob Cardinal.
All right. Thank you to each of our candidates for sharing your passion and your vision for improving our great city of Maplewood. We really do appreciate that you stepped forward to take this leadership role, and we're looking forward to the leadership in the future. We would like to thank our hosts today, St. John's Hospital, for hosting us at this location, and also the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce for being the host, and also to On Location Channel 19 for videotaping this presentation and for re-showing it so that many other people can gain access to our candidates. Local government does have a huge impact on the community and our ability to grow, prosper, and create jobs. And you have a voice. You have the opportunity to look for your leadership in the future. And please do get out and vote on September 15th. There also are a number of candidates running for the City Council. There are 2 open seats for that also. So please remember to educate yourself, learn about the candidates, and get out and vote on September 15th. Thank you. Have a great day.
Good job, Diana.